Hello kids, today let's learn Unit 5, The Snare. It is a poem from your English 1 textbook, page 67. Let's first learn about the poet. The Snare is written by James Stephens. James Stephens was an Irish novelist and poet. After finishing his schooling, he graduated as a solicitor's clerk. He produced many retellings of Irish myths and fairy tales and wrote several original novels and books of poems. James Stephens grew up in the slum of Dublin and worked as a stenographer during the early years of his age. Later, he served for some years as an assistant curator in Dublin. He had deep interest in Gaelic art, legends, literature, and culture. As you can see in the picture, this is the snare, which is used to caught a rabbit or any other kinds of animal. This is how the snare look like. Let's read the poem. I hear a sudden cry of pain, there it in a snare. Now I hear the cry again, but I cannot tell from where. But I cannot tell from where he is calling out for aid, crying on the frightened air, making everything afraid. Making everything afraid, wrinkling up his little face as he cries again for aid, and I cannot find the place, and I cannot find the place where his paw is in the snare. Little one, oh little one, I am searching everywhere. Words meaning that we have from the poem. Aid means help, wrinkling means making lines appear on the face, snare means trapped, paw is foot of an animal, wrinkling the face means creasing the face with pain, crying means weeping. Explanation of the first stanza. In the first stanza, we come to know that the poet suddenly hears a painful cry that seems the cry of a rabbit which has been caught up in a snare. He hears the sound of a pain again, but he fails to locate the place as he does not know where the sound is coming from. Stanza 2. In stanza 2, he does not know where the sound of the pain comes from. The rabbit is calling for help. The painful cry haunts him and it creates a horror in the whole atmosphere. It creates a frightening atmosphere. The poet feels that in such a state everyone feels afraid. The effect is sorrowful here. Stanza 3. As the poet hears the painful cries of this poor rabbit again, he tries hard to find out the place where it is in trouble. He imagines the small face of the rabbit wrinkled up in severe pain. The rabbit calls again for help, but the poet is unable to discover the animal. Stanza 4, the last stanza. The poet is not able to find the place where the paw of the rabbit is caught in the snare. Here he talks about the protection and freedom of wild animals. The poet feels that the paw of the rabbit is caught up in a trap and it is calling out for help. The poet hears the call again and again, and he does his level best to find him everywhere in order to help him. This incident arouses the sympathy for the poor and weak. Let's have a quick summary of the poem. The summary of the poem. In this poem, the poet describes how a rabbit gets caught in a snare. There are the cries of the pain, which the poet can recognize that a rabbit whose paw is trapped in the snare, is in great trouble. The poet depicts the situation of sympathetic attitude. He wants to help the rabbit, but he is unable to locate it. That the once gives us the message that the rabbit has lost its freedom. The poet creates sympathy in readers against the wild animals. The snare becomes a metaphor for any trap that keeps one from freedom. The painful cries haunt him, and it creates a horror in the whole atmosphere. Crying, hearing the cries of the trap, one is always frightening, especially when he or she is calling for aid. The effect is sorrowful in the whole poem. He imagines the small face of the rabbit wrinkling up in severe pain. The rabbit calls again for help, but the poet is unable to discover the animal. Here he talks about the protection and freedom of wild animals. We can move on to the question and answers. You can write down the question and answers in your notebook along with the word meaning should be written down in your spellings notebook, and the question and answers in your English 1 notebook. Don't forget to write the day and the date, the heading, Unit 5, the snare. Leave one line and start writing. Answer the following question. Question number A. What does the person hear? The person hears a sudden cry of pain. Number B. What kind of cry does the rabbit make? Use 3 words to describe the cry. The cry is sudden, painful, and frightened. C. What does wrinkling mean? What does it suggest? Wrinkling means scrunching up, making lines appear on the face. It suggests that the rabbit was passing through a very troublesome time. Number D. Which part of the rabbit is trapped? His paw is trapped in the snare. Number E. Which line tells us that the rabbit is hurt as well as scared? The first line tells us that the rabbit is hurt as well as scared. That's all that we can learn from the poem The Snare. Follow the instruction. I repeat again, you have to write down the word meanings in your spellings notebook, the question and answers in your English 1 notebook. Remember to write the date, the heading, the homework, the lesson number, Unit 5. The heading is The Snare. I hope you can follow the things which have been said. Thank you.